Hello, everyone, and welcome into an all-new Questionable Decisions. I'm your host, Taylor Gabriels. Joining me, as always, is the Godfather, Tim Thomas, and subbing in for the first time ever on this podcast for the scrappy one is Mr. Jake Copeland.
Hello.
Hey, welcome, Jake.
There's no nickname there, huh?
No, I don't have one for him yet. I'm sure you'll get one by the end of this.
Either the worst face or the worst voice in podcasting. Either one.
Perfect.
I was going to call you JC, but that might be confusing.
Yeah,
I do have really
else.
good abs, so my core is strong.
Okay.
I don't
Be
think
blasphemous
I
on this.
I apologize.
All right. So we don't normally do questionable decisions, but obviously there is a big fight coming up in just a few days from now, and we have to get on here and talk about it. And we had to bring in reinforcements. And actually, before we get to Conor McGregor,
Yes. So, wait, are we going to... Did you go over... Did I just space out on why Zach is gone?
That's what I was going to get to right now.
Okay.
So the reason Zach is gone is because he's being responsible. And I never thought I would say that in regards to Zach, but it's true. He's being a responsible papa, getting ready for the birth of his child, so he's doing bigger and better things.
He's not just like prepping for like Black Ops or whatever game's coming out.
I think that's really what it is. Yeah. I don't actually think he's having a child. I think he's just getting ready for Black Ops.
Perfect.
But I can't prove it, and his wife's in on the joke too, so...
It's the long con here.
It is.
This has been like a 10-month con.
Exactly. So, Jake, just, to give the listeners a little bit of background on you, and I'll let you speak to this more, but you were a fan of the UFC a while back, when we first started watching the UFC, but have since drifted away, and now you would maybe consider yourself more of a casual fan at this point?
Most definitely. I'm usually generally aware of some of the bigger fights, and I try to catch the big ones when they happen. But in general, just kind of the lack of marketing and kind of distance from other friends who I might talk to about it or I might watch it with is really kind of driven a little bit of a wedge between me and the sport.
Well, I think you're actually a pretty awesome person to talk to about the sport because you do represent like the masses. Like this sport is dying. I mean, I'm sure you guys saw the buy rate for the Woodley Till. They're saying it hasn't come out yet, but they're thinking that it could be around 130,000, which is just abysmal for Darren Till. That's supposed to be their next big draw, and that's so shitty. That's like Mighty Mouse territory. So they're in real trouble. There's a lot of people in the same boat as you that come around for the Conors, the Rouseys, the Brocks when they're there, and then just miss the rest because that's where basically all of society is right now. That's why it's a dying sport. I mean, shit, did you guys see HBO today? Just on the combat sports thing?
No.
HBO today announced they're getting out of boxing permanently.
Really?
Yeah. They basically did their market research and they said, you know what, we've decided that our viewers have spoken and they do not subscribe for boxing.
That's crazy.
Which is, they're like the landmark. Like, Jim Lampley, HBO, Max Kellerman, that's like boxing and it's gone. It's going to be 2018, it's over.
Do you think that has anything to do with Pacquiao, Mayweather ending their careers?
Like, are you saying that,
those were the big draws, right?
Look, maybe this could be the start of something special for boxing, that if something like an HBO goes away and they all start going towards Showtime or these new little apps, they've had a couple of them pop up. The Joshua fight was on an app, like a $10 a month app. But if you have like a powerhouse like HBO go away, maybe you would see it kind of come together. Maybe everybody'd start to fall under Showtime and we'd start getting these big fights more often. But in general, I mean, it just might be a state of combat sports thing. I mean, look at what's happening.
Could something like the Triple G and Canelo fight and kind of result? Like, how were the buys for that?
I think they were saying it was good, not as good as the first one, but that's what happens when you get everybody all fired up and you have a fucking draw.
Yeah.
That everyone thought was bullshit. So, I don't know what else to say it politely.
They really shot themselves in the foot with that one because the second fight was incredible, and it doesn't matter where you come down on that decision. It's somewhat marred and tainted by the first fight, and if they would have just given that fight to Triple G, you'd be at 1-1 and you'd be going into a trilogy fight that no one would be upset about, because I truly believe the people that thought Triple G won the second fight, they were somewhat influenced by the first fight and by the lack of decision in his favor, so they were already going in leaning his direction.
Well, look, this podcast, we tell stories, right? We go over fighters' stories. Sometimes you just have to let these fucking stories play out. If you had asked the UFC when Nate fought Conor, if they could have picked, right? If they could have had the judges on the take or whatever, they would have said Conor all the way. But Nate beating Conor was the best thing that could ever happen to the UFC. that feud. Conor wins the rematch. His popularity skyrockets. Nate's a superstar now. You have 2 mega draws out of it. So sometimes just let the story play out. Don't fuck with it, because if you had let Triple G win the first one and now Canelo wins and looks good doing so, now you got your trilogy fight. And it'd be fucking magnificent. Dicks.
Okay, so speaking of Conor McGregor, we can move on from the boxing. And I don't, we tend to be a little bit doom and gloom on this podcast in regards to the UFC and their marketing. But let's talk about maybe some positives coming up here. Barring injury, we're going to get Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov, which is, I'm super excited for
What's
this
the
fight.
last MMA fight as big as this? Honest question. I'm trying to think.
Well, qualified. Big as in for everyone involved.
Just even for you, not buy rate.
Just my excitement for a fight.
Yeah, sure. We can go through it a bunch of different ways, but yeah, for you, what do you think? Anything?
Oh man, nothing's coming to mind. I guess. I don't know.
Don't
That's tough.
Say Anderson Weidman. I see you over there getting all fired up right now.
Huge grin. I was thinking about bringing up Matt Hughes.
I was gonna tell you that though that fight is gonna be a sore subject around here. So I know you've listened to past episodes. You got to be careful. So for those that don't know, Jake was with me at Anderson Weidman, so that was an emotional
Rooting
night.
for.
You don't even have to ask that question.
Weidman. I hate Anderson Silva's guts.
I control this podcast. You know that, right?
That's cool.
I have control over the mute button.
Hopefully you make my voice even higher than it normally is, so I just sound absolutely awful.
We just made sure when Zach was out for a while that we brought in a fellow Anderson Silva hater. So
yeah, thank you guys.
That was the key.
Appreciate it.
Got to keep it level.
Fair
here.
and balanced.
So nothing. We can't come up with a single, Conor Nate 2, is this bigger?
It's up there.
For your excitement, or I guess your excitement's a better question, because buy rate wise it'll be bigger because of his popularity from the Mayweather fight.
Yeah, and for the casual fan, I don't think it will be, because you don't have the momentum of the first Nate fight, and you don't have the marketing that fight got.
Yeah.
So you have the one press conference coming out of this where fans weren't allowed to be present. You still got a lot of gems and a lot of sound bites out of it, because Conor is going to give you that no matter what. But in terms
did you see
of
the GIF did you see the video going around? It was like you drunk at Chuck E. Cheese when it's a 9-year-old's birthday party or some shit, and it's like him trying to give him the whiskey. Like, why don't you drink? Why don't you drink? I don't drink. It's really good. Bless his heart. I don't know if you guys saw it, but I was sitting there. He was drinking like a champion, and I'm like, man, is this going to hit him in like 20 minutes? Because I was thinking about myself, and I'm like, I'd hang on for a while, and then I'd feel it slipping, like, uh-oh. But he just
stay quiet. No one will notice.
Yeah.
Don't ask me why I know what I'm about to say, but when you do a lot of cocaine, you can drink like a champion.
Okay, there we go. That's fair.
Really, your tolerance goes through the roof when if you've just done a bunch of cocaine. You can drink till the cows come home and not be affected by it.
If I had to guess what he was up to before, based on some of those hyena noises.
You're not taking down that much whiskey in that press conference without
I don't know what those noises were, but...
Those hyena noises were glorious.
What happened?
He's just going through a pretty heavy Lion King phase right now.
Yes. So,
Holy
Jake,
shit.
as somebody, for lack of a better phrase, on the outside looking in on this, because I imagine most of our listeners are hardcore MMA fans and probably surround themselves with like-minded people and listen to podcasts that are pretty hardcore into MMA. So we have a unique opportunity to bring your perspective here as a casual fan. Did you hear much about this fight? Have you heard much about this fight?
I know that it existed, some people I follow on Twitter, including the MMA Untold
nice blog. I like what you did there.
And I knew it happened. It just being kind of plugged into sports in general, I knew that it was announced. I didn't realize that it was like so soon. It seems like a really short time in between it being announced, and there hasn't. I saw like maybe a 10-second commercial for it. It's really remarkable. So I was at 225 in Chicago, and I was I was in the seats. Had this amazing card, amazing fights throughout the night, and UFC does just such a phenomenal job of getting you pumped up to be there and to eat all the downtime in between fights. You were just on 10, you're just jacked, and then the Who starts blasting and your adrenaline goes, and like you're just ready to unleash. And it's such a stark contrast between the feeling of being there waiting to see a fight, and then once you're out of that environment, there's just nothing. There's no saturation in any market. Like, I'm aware of random football games that I have no interest in. I know that, you know, this team is going to play their rival. I have no idea about UFC unless I'm randomly in a bar and I look up and the fights are on. It's just kind of remarkable. It's such a stark contrast, and they do such a good job when you're there, but it's like they don't care at all to try to bring people who are on the fence. Like, I feel like it wouldn't take much for me to get 100% back into it, but there's no awareness of it.
I'm about to get pissed off here because you're 100% right. So last Thursday night, it was the fucking Browns. The Browns beat, was it the Jets, right? Browns Jets, Thursday Night Football. And I'm texting with my brother, and I'm like, you know, the NFL and Hard Knocks are doing something right when I'm watching the fucking Jets Browns game on Thursday Night Football, which is just a shit game, right? But we both had watched Hard Knocks. And by the way, the text before that was, are you watching the game? And he said yes, because he also watched Hard Knocks. And Hard Knocks just takes you through the preseason, and you get to know these players, and you're like, man, I love Baker Mayfield. I want to see what happens with Josh Gordon. Gets you invested in all these players. And the minute Baker Mayfield comes in, you're just like, oh my God, I have to see what happens. And he leads this comeback. And I'm like, this is one of the greatest fucking NFL games I've seen. Like, I've enjoyed this more than outside of a Falcons game. A game in years, because I'm so invested in the players. And that's a random game on a Thursday night. Well, the UFC puts on a fight card, was it last weekend? And I don't know fucking like 95% of the fighters, and I don't know shit about them. Maybe if I knew something. I mean, again, it's why we're here, and we always talk about it. They don't tell the stories well enough, because that's all it took for me. I just needed to care about like a Baker Mayfield to want to see what happened, and to know that can they break the curse? You know, they hadn't won in fucking 2 years or whatever. Whoops.
Oops.
Yeah, but the point is if you know the story, you care.
I 100% agree.
And if you, it's, what was that, the Dana White not looking for a fight, the Contender Series.
Yes.
They played that trailer the one night, and it was phenomenal. Like, man, if they just did this for any given fight night, we'd actually care, and we might turn these things on. But they don't. Yeah,
so I mean, it's well documented here that we take issue with this, and we've brought it to your attention as listeners if you didn't already notice it. But I would say that as much as they fail to tell the fighters' stories, like Jake pointed out, there really just isn't a whole lot of mass marketing. There's stuff in Vegas. There's a random thing on ESPN, and that's really about it. I don't watch a ton of live television, but I haven't seen one advertisement for Conor Khabib.
Well, that's the thing, though. They still are currently, and they have been for the past X amount of years, on the same network as the NFL. They're on Fox. Why is there not more synergy there? Why did this never pick up? And now they're going to go to ESPN, which is fine, too. I know that's going to help quite a bit, but it's not fucking Fox and the NFL, which is millions of sports fans that like to drink beer and see fucking violence. Basically, the NFL is just glorified violence half the time.
So do you think, and I'll ask both of you this, do you think that Conor McGregor can reignite some interest? Jake, I mean, I would assume you're going to be watching this fight. Will you watch the fight that comes after it? Will you have any interest in New York? Do you know who's slated to fight? That's a better question. Do you know who's scheduled to fight after Conor McGregor?
No idea.
See, this is 0%. The problem. You want to take this one? This is the problem.
So the UFC actually did something perfect. They set up Conor McGregor against Khabib, who has a humongous following in Russia.
And a sweet hat.
You son of a bitch.
And so Conor's going to fight Khabib, right, for the belt. Well, over here, off to the side, meanwhile, they've set up Nate Diaz.
He's back.
He's back.
Nate's back.
And he's agreed to fight Dustin Poirier, a fight he can win. And they're going to have that fight on the card after Conor McGregor. Now, why is this brilliant? This is brilliant for a couple of reasons, but one of the biggest reasons is that if you tune in for UFC 230, or 229 rather, and Conor wins and the whole world will be watching, they have an opportunity while all eyes are on their product to advertise the upcoming card with Nate Diaz in New York, Madison Square Garden, all that good stuff. If Conor wins, you would think that everyone would tune in to the following card to watch Nate and see if Nate can win, and then the two can run into each other. Oh, but there's more. It's even sweeter because Nate is going to fight at 165, a weight class that has not previously existed, a weight class that they are just now going to introduce, and there'll be a belt on the line for that weight class. So now you have the opportunity to have Nate Diaz with a belt, Conor McGregor with a belt, and a trilogy fight. 100% absolutely brilliant. So what's wrong with this?
They haven't told anybody about it?
Well, that's one thing. Nate Diaz is not the main event.
They won't commit.
They won't commit to making him the main event. They'll create a weight class. They'll put a belt on the line. They'll set up Conor Nate 3, but they won't give him the main event spot.
Is it on the shitty fights on Facebook? That's all I need to know.
It may as well be.
Sweet.
I mean, look, they might have to concede this as time's gone on, and they're starting to look like they're going to do Jones and Gustafsson, and it looks like they actually might run out of options here for real. They might, but they'll do it kicking and screaming. They didn't want to.
That's the problem. They're running out of options. You don't need options. That's the fight.
I guess in defense of UFC, has that ever been said on this podcast?
Good point.
Not likely.
Voice of the UFC.
How
there.
many times has Diaz burned him?
That's totally
like
fair.
a billion.
Fewer times than Khabib.
Oh, all right. I don't know what that means, but okay.
Khabib's pulled out of more fights than Diaz has burned the UFC, and Khabib is headlining.
Did you see the meme that was like, has anybody told Khabib there's alcohol in tiramisu? Because he loves the tiramisu. And
Yes.
he's so against alcohol. So good. No, you're right though. He has destroyed quite a few cards.
And I mean, that's a fair question, but I don't think that's a factor.
Okay.
Because all you would do is load up behind them. You would just make an incredible co-main event.
Sure.
So that's not the, because what are you going to put DC and Jones? They've both pulled out of fights.
Is Joe Silva still matchmaking these
No,
days?
he
he
left,
is
and
not.
that's a very valid question because there's been some questionable choices since it's happened, since he left.
Okay.
Very questionable.
And there's been some good ones. It hasn't all been bad.
Sure.
There's 2 women's fights coming up that are incredible. So they're doing some things really well, and then other things that you just shake your head at. And this is one of those things where, like you said, we don't give UFC a lot of credit on this podcast, but they set it up perfectly. And then at the last minute, they say they're looking for a main event, and I'm over here scratching my head. It just doesn't make any sense. Like Tim said, you had it. You had what boxing didn't do. You had the biggest star in the sport, Conor McGregor, and a rival, and they split. And the third fight will be gigantic. And if there are belts on the line, it will be even bigger. There will be more at stake. And you're going to have them fight back to back, one of them fighting in New York. It literally, you couldn't write this any better. And then what, you're going to go just try to find any other fight to put ahead of them on the card? It blows my mind.
Well, and if you're the UFC, I mean, look, obviously you're in the Conor McGregor business. You want him to win a third title, right? But we all kind of know 170 is very dangerous. I mean, those are some big boys. When they went up to 170 and him and Nate fought at that weight, he looked small. Nate looked huge compared to him. Because then they say Nate got in the cage closer to 190 at that. Nate looked gigantic. Dana makes it sound like he was like 300 pounds, but he looked gigantic. But this is 2 155ers fighting for the 165 belt, so Conor could go fight a guy who's his size for the bigger belt, and it'll make him look like he's won the 3, and really it's just a guy his size again. And if you're in the Conor business, that's brilliant, because now he's an even more of a fucking star.
Conor's got 1 belt around his waist and 2 over his shoulders. Just stop right there.
So Z Payne, Zach took issue with Dana saying that Conor's the GOAT, and so I looked into the quote. And did you see that what Dana said is that all things considered, like fighting, talking, promoting, you name it, Conor's the greatest to ever step into the cage. When I heard Dana's quote, all things considered, I was like, do you really take issue with it? So there's I'll raise Zach's concern right here. When you say it that way, is he the GOAT?
Because he's incredible at self-promotion. I mean, who's better in the history of UFC at self-promotion?
I think you just go back to what we always talk about when we have this GOAT conversation is what are your guidelines,
Well, that's where Dana says, all things considered, promotion, fighting, you name it. To me, when you say it that way, that's again why these headlines are so dangerous, all this clickbaity shit. When you look at it that way, you're like, well, yeah, nobody's been more important to the UFC in the long run, right? I mean, he just led to a $4 billion sale himself, him and Ronda. But
I would certainly argue that he's one of the 3 most important people in MMA.
I mean, Ronda was comparable,
time.
but she flamed out.
Yeah.
Well, important and greatest of all time are also 2 different things.
Of course
you can have incredibly important musicians who aren't very good or, whatever.
Do you think though? Do you think this parallels a little bit the Michael Jordan conversation? Because I feel like, I mean, we're from Chicago. I feel like a lot of times when people are talking about Jordan being the greatest, even if his stats are lesser than another, let's say LeBron in a lot of areas, you're factoring in a guy who propelled basketball to heights it'd never seen before. A guy who was in commercials and advertisements and traveling the world and took basketball international and was on these dream teams and made movies and did everything with flair. I think when you talk about Michael Jordan being the greatest, you're talking about more than just his statistics.
Yeah, it's absolutely the brand as well.
It is.
Just like the Conor McGregor brand is bigger than just the man.
Because I think there's no question you can argue there's better fighters than Conor McGregor. But yeah, if you're factoring in his influence on the sport, his presence, I don't know. I don't know if it gets any bigger than that.
Everybody that's even in the same, like in the conversation, like your Brocks and Andersons, and they just all have such clear deficiencies. It's like Anderson struggled to market himself, and Brock brought over his WWE fame that, and then again kind of took his ball and went home. When he lost a couple times. Everybody, GSP's in the conversation, but again, how much of his popularity was really waning in the end there. I don't know. But GSP's in the conversation. He's certainly in that greatest of all time all across the board because he's got that it factor. He's amazing. I mean,
yeah, I would say GSP is definitely in that conversation.
You brought up musicians a minute ago. Can I quickly just bring up my drive?
Please
do.
So
I was driving earlier and I saw a fucking Jeep parked on the side of the road, all purple, and the spare tire had a huge Prince logo on it, or the artist for whatever Prince was called in the end. Was he Prince again by the end?
I think
artist, so. Just the symbol.
Yeah,
the symbol. It was I love this. I love this for a lot of reasons, okay? First of all, it's 2018 and someone's rocking a Prince Jeep. Awesome. I just have so many questions for this person. Not even that I would just be rude to him. I just be like, we just got to talk. Who are you as a person? What are you doing?
What's going on in your life?
What's going on in your life?
Let's talk about you for a while.
Awesome. First of all. So then I'm like, God, this is fucking phenomenal. The commitment to Prince, was this something we did before? What year is this vehicle? How much did we pay to get this done? Is this officially licensed? I don't know. I want to find out. I got to tell you, I thought about stopping over there. So the next logical question is, if you're going to commit this much to a band, who would you do it for?
I think I know Jake's answer.
I don't even know.
You got the Metallica star on the back of yours. Don't lie.
Metallica.
You're gonna put your own band.
Yeah, my own band logo.
You son of a bitch.
Shameless self-promotion.
That is not why we brought you on this podcast.
I knew it. This is like Conor with the whiskey at the press conference. Yes. Jake, it took him like 10 minutes to plug his band.
If you guys want to go over to www. No, just kidding.
You can plug your band. That's it.
Our latest video did get 1.2 thousand hits. So.
I thought you were going to say 1.2 million.
Yeah, that's nice. Very deliberate.
Hey, no big deal.
So besides Live at Joe's, what are you guys? Live at Joe's?
The band's over, so it's cool. You don't have to go see us.
What?
Yeah.
You guys quit?
Live breakup.
You just did a show.
Yeah, it's our last show. Joe, the titular Joe of Live at Joe's is moving.
I'm finding this out live on the podcast. I didn't know the band was breaking up.
Yeah, calling it a day.
Okay, Jesus. All right.
Well,
so besides no big
Live
at Joe's.
Hey, you got any booze here?
Yeah, it's a fucking meltdown.
I do have whiskey, actually, if you want some.
Okay, so besides Live at Joe's.
It's really maybe Stone Temple Pilots. That sweet like Shangri-La-di-da flower thing
over Metallica.
Would be incredible.
I'm picturing you with a black Jeep, a white Metallica logo on the tire, the spare tire, and then maybe some flames. I don't know.
No, see, I think you would have to go full. You'd have to go in deep and do like Ride the Lightning with lightning up the sides and like that, like green. Like with the full blown Metallica and like lime green. No, that'd be legit.
Okay.
I'm back in on Metallica.
Did I sway?
100% back in. Okay, good.
What do you got? Anything over there?
Well, I feel like Zach.
One.
Yeah, I feel like Zach would hurt me if I didn't say 311.
Yeah,
that would definitely make a good logo on the.
See, my answer is going to be terrible because it would be 311 or the Shangri-La. That was phenomenal. That was just fantastic. Yeah, so mine's going to be terrible.
How would you decorate the rest of it, though?
Just large
would you have
pictures
purple?
Of Scott Weiland.
Yeah.
You have some purple and yellow mixed in.
Maybe a silhouette of someone doing that butterfly dance would be kind of
sweet. A big megaphone on the side.
Yes, there we go. Perfect.
All right, good deal.
I'm 100% in. If you guys know a car guy, let me know. I was
talking to Taylor about this the other day, and I was like, because this person clearly is in, what do you think, top 50 Prince fans in the world? I mean, this is commitment.
It's
because I mean, what you're
in 2018
marking up a $25,000, $35,000 vehicle.
This is commitment. And I was hearing somebody the other day saying like, whatever. I think they said that I'm the number one Bears fan, and I was telling Taylor about this. I don't know that that's something to brag about because, again, if you meet people that are like obsessive fans of stuff, like what was that MTV show? Didn't they have one where they would like put the shit on the wall and it would be like super fans and they could like meet the celebrity or some shit?
Yes, Fanatic or something. No,
right. I think it was like some shit like that. Well, usually pretty rough. It's pretty tough. You're a pretty big fan of the person, a little obsessive. And I was like, do you really want to be the number one fan? Because I'm pretty sure that'd be super embarrassing.
Especially if you're the number one Bears fan, your heart is just constantly broken.
Just devastated.
Yeah.
You know what, though? Okay, I'm going to push back on this.
You want to be the number one fan?
No, you don't want to be the number one fan. Maybe number two.
Okay.
But here's how I'm going to push back on this. I often think about this. You're both dads. I often think about this. If I could give advice to my future child, one of the things I would tell them is find something you love and pour yourself into it. And just become the person for that thing. Become the go-to person. And it literally doesn't matter what it is. If you're the number one person with a Ninja Turtle collection, you'll end up on the news. You'll have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of paraphernalia to sell at any point. You will be the go-to person for that one thing. Now, it's a little bit different with being a fan of a band. I don't know that really pays off in the end, but I think
Prince Jeep does pay off.
Yeah, well, yes, it does.
That resale value.
Woo! But I think you could be the number one fill in the blank. Fan is where it gets a little bit because then you're riding the coattails of someone else.
Yeah, you don't want to like have your entire existence be based on someone else, whether it's a team or a celebrity. Like that gets a little creepy and embarrassing.
It's really weird to tie your identity into something. And I found, as someone who has done that several times throughout my life,
we're going back to the Metallica thing. Where's this headed? Okay, no.
Intervention. Another good MTV show.
No, I mean, I find that like if you pour yourself into like a passion, writing, music, whatever that happens to be, like that's the kind of relationships, being a really good brother or dad or son or whatever. That's what's rewarding. But like the number one fan of something, being the number one, you could be like my Uncle Jerry and have the number one collection of toenail clippings in the U.S. Hey, no big deal.
Hey-o. Is that real?
No.
Okay.
Don't question
God.
it. Don't question it. We don't talk about Jerry. Don't worry about it. I think, but I mean, so if you pour yourself into 311, we're all huge fans of 311, but it's about what you get out of being a fan of that music, and it's that positivity and your connection to not only the music but other fans and other people. You see someone on the street with a 311 shirt and you can automatically have a conversation with that person.
Yeah.
You pour yourself into baseball, you're a fan of baseball, the game and your team, and you're in Vegas and you see someone with it was a Matt, who was the lefty? Who was your Matt? Kane.
Well, Matt
yeah,
Kane.
you saw someone with like a
Matt.
Matt. Oh,
sir.
Whatever. Sorry. Apologies.
Was
You
just
saw
random.
someone with like a Kane jersey in Vegas, like 5 spots ahead of you, waiting in line at the hotel, and you just like went up and just
that sounds about
you
right.
lost your shit.
I actually do think I remember this. Was this back at Mandalay?
Yeah, right before I had my run-ins with John Jones. Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I saw John Jones like 7 times that weekend.
Yeah.
So that was
This is true.
awkward.
No, I remember this.
Yeah, that was sweet.
God, what fight
Was
card
he nice?
So I went to the sports book. No big deal. Just trying to, spend the only money that I brought. And John Jones and Uriah Faber met right in front of the sports book. And I was just walking past. I'm like, oh shit, that's John Jones. Oh shit, that's Uriah Faber. I don't really like John Jones. And I just witnessed them meet up, and they had their cliques around him. Like, well, that was kind of cool, whatever. And then like 30 minutes later, he gets into an elevator, and like 2 hours later, I see him leaving the hotel, and like all weekend, I shadow John Jones.
So that's why you got a John Jones fight kit?
No.
You son of a bitch.
That's why I will say it time and time again. That is one of the best things about our sport. I say our sport, MMA. You're not going to see LeBron James walking around Mandalay Bay, just hanging out and run into him 15 times and ride the elevator with him. It's just not going to, and that's not a shot at LeBron. I could have filled in any name there. It's just our stars, barring Conor McGregor, our stars just don't have that mainstream. And to parallel it,
You're right. Hopefully, are you mentioning Jens Pulver right now?
Because I was just thinking about that.
I've been to 2 MMA events in the past
Taylor
like
knows
8
that
years.
story.
And outside of both of them, I randomly run into Jens Pulver. So I was actually
on the way out of 225. Did you talk about that?
Tim and I were leaving.
Yeah.
We were looking for Zach, actually, and we were walking, and this dude passes me, and I'm like, holy shit, is that Jens Pulver? And he looks around and he goes like, yes, it is.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
he literally said it
shit.
out loud.
Yeah,
yes, it is.
yeah.
I was like, oh, Jesus.
did he give you the finger gun?
Yeah. Oh, there was a finger gun.
God.
Oh, absolutely. And he made the little.
That was cool, too, because he was
It was
super
great.
happy to be recognized, actually.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
And I was like, I said something that might have been just a little bit of hyperbole, like you're a fucking legend or something like that. I don't know that I'd necessarily. First.
I mean, that counts the legend.
All right. I mean, I don't know if I was 100% sober.
This is
if
what I
said
love.
That, but it was awesome to see him. It was a great interaction. He seems like the chillest dude on earth. So
It's just going to be 100% Militich references. He's going to have like Jens Pulver, Matt Hughes. Every time he tells a story, it's going to be about them.
Don't worry about it. I'm really kind of
Nonstop.
pissed you guys haven't profiled Matt Hughes yet. So
We'll get there one day.
No, we'll get there.
Yeah.
I think we just got a few right now we got to hit soon. So, because we had a few. We got to talk about Riddle coming up here soon.
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll probably wrap this episode up here. Next episode will be Matt Riddle. And Jake, you're going to join us for that one?
That's the plan. We'll see if
Allegedly.
I'm available that day.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Zach might be out for, we don't know how long. He's on the DL for an undisclosed
Well, my
amount of
daughter
time.
is like almost 3 and I'm still on the DL. So I don't know when his life's going to change exactly. My daughter is somehow sick yet again, which means I'm indirectly. It just never ends.
By the time that kid is old enough for him to have his life back, we'll have a second kid, and
It
it's just all over.
Sweet cycle of life. Okay. Well, thank you guys for listening. If you want to hear more, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and you can find us at Patreon. We'll be posting more of these QD episodes, more bonus content. So look for us there. Thanks for listening.
It's all good. And if you don't know, now you know.